feel very fancy, I want you to know. Hi, everybody. First of all, we want to welcome you and thank you for coming. We know that many of you had to make special arrangements, and sometimes that can be tricky. And we really appreciate your effort that you made to be here live with us. I'm Kim Keller, and I'm a co-founder of a nonprofit, new status nonprofit, autism support group here in Russellville. And I recently heard this information, and it seemed like something we needed to share to a greater population. And that's what leads us here to Friendship. But first, it was in 2005 when my son was given the diagnosis of autism. He was 2 years old, and at that time he started coming to Friendship, and he got preschool services, he got OT, PT, and speech, and it was wonderful to have Friendship as part of our lives. Now it's 2018, my son is 15 and doing amazing, and I'm so excited that our relationship with Friendship continues on, and they have been just a great cheerleader and supporter of what we're doing with our autism support group and Friendship. We thank you very much. Thank you for having us here. How many of you have had that fear or that thought, who will take care of my loved one when I'm gone? And I think as a parent, for me, myself, that is one of the scariest things that I've had to deal with. You know, you get the diagnosis, that's tough, but it's an answer, and you can deal with that. But when it comes to thinking about who will care for my loved one after I'm gone, that's a real scary, this is real life here, and we got to figure this out. It was recently that I was invited to hear an information presentation by Harry, and I went and I learned so much. And we're glad that we were able to bring this to you. We're glad that you came, and thank you for being here.
Hello. You're fine. My name is Regina Foster, and I'm also one of the co-founders of the AMOM. And we're just so thankful that, like Kim said, that Friendship's allowed us to be here, and especially bringing Mr. Harry, and I'm going to tell you more about him in just a moment. But my involvement with Friendship started not as long ago as Kim's did, but my son Tanner, I was diagnosed with autism between the ages of 5 and 6. He's now 17, going on 18. He's done remarkably well over the years with lots of therapy and lots of special people in his life to help him along the way. He's done great. Part of a big thing he's been able to do this last year, he's in the 11th grade at Russellville High School. Part of what he's been able to do through the wonderful works of Friendship is join their Job Path program, which allows children with different disabilities to be taught firsthand how and what to do with the job. How do you get a job? What, you know, all that entails in getting a job, keeping the job. So they literally work with these children half a day of school, half a day they're in their class, half a day they go to Job Path, and it teaches them how to live and work in our real world. And then they match these students up with different businesses here in our community in Russellville, and then they are mentors, and the children are able to do an internship, and Friendship sponsors the whole thing. So my son is a proud employee of the Friendship community, and he lets everyone know that. So without them, we wouldn't have this ability for Tanner to have this job and many other kids to have this job in our community. So we're very, very thankful for them. I met Mr. Harry also a few months back, who came and did a program for us, and we learned lots of wonderful information. He's a great go-to guy, and we were thrilled to know that he could come here and do this and reach lots of people. And with that being said, we are live on Facebook this evening, and so we hope we're reaching those people who didn't have the luxury of coming and meeting Mr. Harry in person. So through this wonderful new technology that we have, if everyone is on our AMOM Facebook page, if you're not, for those who might need to know, you have to like our page before you can actually watch the video. Once the video is over, you do have the luxury of going back and watching the video. So for those who aren't here, it's not going to disappear. Watch it, you know, middle of the night like the rest of us are usually up doing. And if you have any questions in particular, post your questions. If we have time and can get to them while we're live, we will. But if not, what we will do is I'll compile the questions. If you have an email, if you have a phone number, or any information that you want us to give to Mr. Harry, We will compile that and ensure that he gets that information, and I know he will get back with you promptly to answer any questions that you have. So we'll do a little introduction about Mr. Harry here. For over 30 years, Harry Ehrenberg has been working with parents of children who have a disability, helping them arrange their estate to provide for the child's financial security and assure the quality of the child's life. He has also lobbied at both the state and federal level on behalf of these families. For example, he participated in meetings with the staff of the United States Finance Committee about legislation that clarified the use of special needs trust to maintain Medicaid eligibility. The position he advocated became part of the Tax Act of 1993. His expertise in this area has been recognized by the Arkansas Bar Association. He has taught Medicaid eligibility planning at continuing legal education seminars, and we are thrilled to have him here with us this afternoon.
Thank you. Well, I'm delighted to be here, and I'll tell you why. Because although my background is finance, I am a parent of a child with special needs, multiple special needs, okay? So I have an appreciation of what it's like to fight to get your child's benefits, the struggle of getting them educated, and for some of us, keeping them out of the criminal justice system. So I know who I'm talking to. How many are parents here? Okay, so most of y'all are parents, and some of y'all are staff. Great. Okay. A few things. I like to keep this very freewheeling. Typically, if you go to a presentation, they're going to say, hold your questions at the end, I'll probably cover it. That's not the way we do it here. If you've got a question, ask it for a couple of reasons. One, somebody else may have that question, and two, you may forget it. And the point is I've got 7 items I want to get across tonight. I'll get those across, and technically, if nobody asks a question, we'll be done in 20, 25 minutes. The last time I was up here, we went for about 2.5 hours, I think, which is fine, because that means you're asking about something that's important to you. And very possibly, you just got to the question before somebody else did. So if you got a question, go ahead and ask it. I'm sure I'm not the only parent who's wide awake at night wondering what's going to happen to my son. He's Morris, but we call him Mo. What's going to happen to him when I'm no longer around, or I just physically can't take care of him, or disabled, or just old, or whatever, okay? And the other question that, if you understand the system, is how can I leave something for Mo that will not disqualify him from his benefits, basically SSI and Medicaid. Okay? And so, as we work through this tonight, there are really 3 broad categories. Some of those are legal questions. I'm not an attorney, but I know enough about it, and I've taught it for the Bar Association that I can at least point you in the right direction. The other is life care planning. In other words, how do you put together a document that you can leave for your successor caregiver? Because the reality is many of our children are going to outlive us. Okay? I've been doing this for 30 years, and I've seen the life expectancy go for about 25, 30 years, totally for a Down syndrome child on average when I first started, and now it's more than doubled and closing in on normal life expectancy. So the question is we've got to be cognizant, we've got to give information to the successor caregiver. We've got to understand that the strain it puts on them. And then the third is how in the world, because we're going to talk about special needs trusts, how much money do we need to fund them with, and how do we fund them? So those are going to be the 3 elements. Now, the first thing I want to go over with you tonight, and that is really the playing field. In fact, first of all, let me introduce Lance Liebelong, my partner. Does everybody have a pen? Does anyone need a pen or anything? We have pens here. Okay. If we can pass these out over here. I've got another set that we can pass out over here. You can take notes on them. I see a lot of y'all have paper. I'll grab mine here. One of the things I did, there was an insurance company called Aviva. They're no longer in the United States. They're out of London. It's the oldest insurance group on the planet. And I was hired to develop their training for their agents and do the training. So this was one of the things we used. It's important to understand the playing field of government benefits. Okay. Everybody got a sheet of paper? Let me hold off for a minute if you don't. Because this is really where everything else is going to revolve around. If you understand this, you're more than halfway home. We got it? Got a pen? Ready to take notes? Okay, good. On this side over here, we have cash benefits. Social Security disability benefits and SSI. Okay? Anyone have a child on SSI? Okay? A few of y'all. Okay? Now, typically if you pick up SSI, you're going to pick up Medicaid. And if you pick up Social Security disability, you're going to get Medicare. And it's possible to be in all four boxes, all four quadrants. Okay? Now, in order to be in this lower one here, the SSI, your child basically has to be impoverished. And so what's the measurement for being impoverished? You have to have assets of less than $2,000 with some exclusions, you know, a car, own a home, you can prepay a funeral. So if you're familiar, you've heard about people who had to go through all their assets because they were in a nursing home and then the state comes in. It's that same set of rules. Okay? Now, there's also an income limit, and your income has to be less this year than $750. Okay? And if it's zero, then you'll get a $700 check, SSI check. And on that $750, you're supposed to live. Okay? Which, I don't know who can do that. It's pretty difficult, okay? But it's important to understand when we're arranging our estates that if we leave more than $2,000 to our child, we're going to lose the SSI. If we lose the SSI, we lose the Medicaid. And for many of our children, that is the only health insurance that they're going to have. Agree with me? Let's see some head shaking. So that's the key. Now, how do we get in all four boxes? Everyone here covered by Social Security? Okay? You or your spouse? Father's the spouse of the child. Okay. When you file for your Social Security, your child might become eligible for what's called the child's benefit. This is what happened to us, okay? My wife, ex-wife, became disabled. It's interesting because she actually worked in the Social Security Administration. She was an attorney for the Social Security Administration, and she was on the panel to become a judge. So she becomes disabled, okay, which meant that it triggered the child benefit from O. To get the child's benefit, the disability, the onset day, had to be before age 22, even though the child could be over 22 when the parent goes on benefits, and the child has to be single. So that benefit is creating a unique problem for our generation and anyone younger than me, because that benefit offsets the SSI dollar for dollar. So SSI is how much this a month this year? $750, right? Okay. So let's say the and the child's benefit's half the parent's benefit. So let's say the parent's benefit is $1,000. Half of that is $500, right? Okay. So that reduces the SSI from what? From $750 to what? A little louder. $250, right? Okay. Now, for my parents' generation, that really wasn't much of a problem because of what their average benefit was. Okay. But for us, my ex-wife's benefit. One is because he's up here, there's something called a Medicare Advantage plan that he would qualify for. And because of the income, he wouldn't pay anything for it, and he wouldn't have any co-pays or deductibles. But candidly, Medicaid is far more appropriate for him than for most of our kids. So there is a way to solve this, okay? There was a congressman from Texas called Pickle, and there's something called the Pickle Amendment, okay? And we are still gyrating through that with Mo. But if your child goes from SSI to Social Security Disability Child's Benefit, you can file for a Pickle benefit, and there is a letter that the Social Security Administration will give you, and then you take that letter, you fill out a form with the state, and the Medicaid comes back, okay? So y'all writing, so I want to just slow down. This is for you. Have a question, ask me a question, whatever, okay? So we understand how this works, okay? And so Mo, if he ever gets married, which he could, Mo's 30, wouldn't be absolutely unheard of, then he would lose the child's benefit. He drops back down to here and has a reduction in income, and he's still on Medicaid. Follow me? We okay on this? Okay. So the question becomes, how do we leave something to our children, because living on $750 a month is rather difficult? And the answer is what's called a special needs trust. Now let me be very clear about this. We have not outthought anybody. We have not outthought the state. We have not outthought the federal government. This is not a loophole. This is not a wink, wink, nod, nod deal. This is just flat out the law. One reason I know is because, yeah, I was involved in a group that met with the staff of the Senate Finance Committee when we got OBRA 93 passed. So we know what the rules are. Not only do we know what the rules are, let me introduce Richard Clark over here. He's a trust officer with Simmons Bank, and he can answer trust questions for us. They administer these trusts. They're not the normal course of a trust. They're different. And so I want to talk about those trusts for a minute. Basically, the first question becomes is who set up the trust? Typically what we want in your situation is for you all to set up the trust. That's called a third-party trust. Because it's your money and you're putting the trust for your child has absolutely no claim over it. It's not the typical trust where they may have some right to demand a percentage of the income or the corpus or anything. They have absolutely no demand rights on it. All distributions are supplemental in nature. In other words, we're looking at the government first. And they're at the total discretion of the trustee. So Mo can't go down to the local Ford dealership and say, hey, I got a trust and it'll pay for a truck. It's just not going to happen. You know, someone at the trustee will say, no, there may be a trust, but he has absolutely no ability to control it. Okay? That is a third-party trust. That's what we want to do. The question is, when does it become alive? You can establish it, and it'll be up and running today. And the nice thing about that is, and you could be the trustee of it while you're alive. And then Mr. Clark could be the successor trustee. And if you'll do that, and if you'll run expenses through it that you're using to supplement your child, he now has a history. And if he knows he's the successor trustee, he may actually give you a little guidance on making a distribution or two. Okay? The other thing, and it's probably you see more often than not, is created at your death through your will. Okay? And so whatever's in your estate, well, a part of it, all of it, however you do it, will go into the trust. Now the other trust is what's called a first party or a self-settled trust. And this is the ones that I was initially involved in. Most of what I've done for 40 years is consult on the financial aspects of litigation. I'm the guy who would go up and testify about how much money is needed to pay someone's future medicals who was involved in an accident, or replace their lost income, or financial products, what was the loss, and things like that. So we had a situation where an attorney made a significant recovery for someone who was already on SSI and Medicaid. And and this was before OBRA 93. But because they did not establish a special needs trust, I mean, we had them before 93, it's just in 93 we clarified them. He got sued and he was successfully sued. So it got him a lot of money and they got sued for it. So one of the attorneys I was working with, we're trying to figure out what to do, and we learned about the special needs trust, and so that's how we got involved in it. So we did a lot of these where we're using their own money, okay? Now the deal that we agreed to, the negotiations that brought this all about in 93 was, if you're going to use your own money to establish a special needs trust, at your death, at the death of the beneficiary, which would be your children, okay? The state has a lien. They're going to recover what they've paid out in Medicaid before anything else is paid to whoever else is the remainder person of that trust. Okay? Now, the other place where we've had to use this is not in litigation, but we've had situations where we couldn't get all the spouses, namely the exes, to agree or cooperate. So, for whatever reason, a father left his child money outright, even though his ex had set up a special needs trust. And so this gave us the ability to maintain the child's eligibility for SSI and Medicaid. But we ended up with two trusts, and nothing particularly wrong with that. Now, the one from the father's money that flowed to the child, the self-settled one, had the lien. We clear on that? The one the mother set up didn't have the lien because it wasn't left to the child. It was left in trust. So whose money got distributed first? Of the two trusts, who would we take money out of? Which would we take money out first? Right. Because you're not under obligation to preserve that money for the state. It's just that there's something left, the state has a lien, has first claims on it, first steps, okay? Okay. So the question is, do we have a trust up and running now? Are we going to do it through your will, one of those two? And is it going to be something that you all set up, hopefully you will, as opposed to something that you've left unintentionally to your child and disqualify the child, and now we have the one for lien? Fair enough on that. Is there a question? I see some eyes sort of. Okay. This may be the longest I've gone without having a question. Okay, so we've talked about, we understand the benefits in the trust. So what is the thing that most often happens? And this is a huge mistake. And I've heard it, I don't know how many times I've heard it, more often than not. We're not going to do a trust. We're going to leave it to one of our, in Mo's case, we're going to leave it to his sister, my daughter, Catherine, okay? Now, what's the problem with leaving Mo's share to Catherine? What? Catherine could spend it. That's exactly right. What else could happen? Okay, who pays taxes on the earning of that money? Catherine does. What happens if Catherine gets sued? People get sued. Catherine's a pretty good driver, but, she's in a wreck. She's got an umbrella policy on that car, so there's $1 million in coverage. But you can cause more than $1 million in damages. So what happens with that money? It's gone, okay? Now, what happens, Catherine gets married, and, this situation creates a lot of stress on families. We have a very high divorce rate. The divorce rate in the country is high anyway, 50%. By some studies, it may be as high as 80% for us. And I'm one of those, okay? So, Catherine gets divorced. So what is her soon-to-be ex going to make a claim? Half that money's his. Now, Catherine has a very, very good divorce attorney. And he makes an argument that, yes, there really is a trust there. It's what's called a constructive trust. And he prevails. And most of the attorneys I've worked with will tell you that strategy has a good chance of working. So we saved the money from the ex. But now who has a claim against that money? Who?
The lawyer.
No, the state. The state, yeah. Because remember when you file for Medicaid, and occasionally when they ever ask for financial information that you're supposed to give them, what do they want to know exists? A trust, right? And right before you sign your name on that form, what's the last statement on that form? Yeah, and what else does it say? You're right there. It's talking about perjury. And if it's not accurate and true, what happens? Yeah, it could be a fine, imprisonment, or both is basically what it says, okay? So let's think about this for a second. Catherine, who as with many of our cases, situations, has been somewhat shoved to the side because a child with special needs typically just simply requires more attention, more of your time. So now she's taking care of Mo. She's paying more taxes than she should, on money that she's trying to reserve for him. And if things really go wrong, she's now being sued by the state and maybe prosecuted, okay? So Catherine ends up in prison. Catherine deserves better than that, okay? So while it's the number one thought, the number one thing I hear people say, we ask, what's your plan so far? What's going to happen? What's going to happen with Mo? Catherine loves her brother, and we're going to leave everything to Catherine. That's like the number one thing you see, okay? And it's the number one disaster. I mean, you're adding insult to injury with that. Fair enough? Okay. So we understand the benefits, we understand special needs trust, and we understand why not to do it. Okay? Now, the next thing you need to consider is who is going to be that successor caregiver. Okay? Now, and when you do that, what you want to do is have this form, okay? It's called the Life Care Planning Guide. Sometimes it's called the Letter of Intent. And we're going to pass around the form at the end of the night. If you'll sign it and give us your email address, we'll send it to you along with pretty much the information I'm covering here and some other things, okay? Okay.
And it's live.
And it's live. Okay. Okay. It's a Life Care Planning Guide. And so it has information that the successor caregivers are going to need. For its history about the family, history about the child. We also want to know about medical care, because what you'll find is that therapies go in vogue, go out of vogue, come back in vogue. If it didn't work the first time, someone needs to know that. Same thing for medications, those types of things. We need to know information about the child. What do they like? What do they not like to do? Who their doctors are, their prescriptions. What are their skills? What are they good at? What do they need help with? The other thing is, what do you want for education? And the toughest part is this, and that is, we're going to have to plan the final arrangements for our children, most of us will, okay? And so this is how you convey it. So if you've prepaid a funeral, we'll talk about it in here. If there's the plot is someplace, someone needs to know. And what do you want, what do you want for it, okay? What's that service going to look like? Now, this is something that you need to keep updated. When we email it to you, it's a fillable form. Preferably updated once a year. The most often dates are either the child's birthday or January the 1st. Okay? Now, to help you get started, pass this out. And if they're not enough for everybody, it's part of what I'll be sending. Thank you. So what do you want for your child's future? Oh, wait, we'll get that passed out, okay? It's coming. Okay. Thank you. Okay, in a residential environment, what do you want? Okay? Candidly, when Mo was young, we would have sent him off to my sister Terry in Atlanta, okay? She has an education background in working with children with special needs, okay? We had a good choice. But for others, it may be something else. It may be some type of facility. Employment, tell us something about employment. What are they capable of doing? Social life, what do they like to do? Like to go to the ball game, like to go to the mall, like to go shopping, like music. Religious environment. And I'm going to ask you that, what are the 6 first religions you want for your child? But what is your child, if you're acting in a religious community and your child is there something they're doing there, okay? Maybe they're in the choir. Maybe they're doing something else, okay? Tell us what it is. give the caregiver a fighting chance. Medical care and then final arrangements, those types of things. And then you can start working on that life care planning guide. It's laborious. It's not something that you do before you see an attorney for a trust. It's an ongoing process. Okay? This you can do relatively easily, and it'll have issues that you're going to want to talk to the attorney about. Fair enough? Okay. So, as we move on, let's talk about the caregiver, because we're really transitioning over to the caregiver. And this is where most people, it's not included in the training. When I did work for Aviva, they gave me the ability to do whatever I wanted to do, and so I was starting to draw from my own experience. And it dawned on me that caregivers wear out. Okay? And the problem is there's very little you can do with a special needs trust for the caregiver. And there are a couple of attorneys who will draft this. But they will draft what's called a caregiver's trust, or it'll be inside of a trust. So there'll be a share that's a special needs trust and a share for the caregiver. Because you're going to go up and down with that caregiver. This is the 13th Amendment. What's the 13th Amendment in the U.S. Constitution? Okay. Did away with slavery. Okay? You can't force someone to be a caregiver forever. And what I'm seeing now is caregivers are playing out. I was brought in on a situation where we had a 74-year-old caregiver. The child was in her 40s. That was not the child. It was not the caregiver's child. She promised the father as he was dying to take care of him, and now she's wearing out. Okay? So let me ask you a simple question. What would your life be like if there was some program out there that would put $1,000 into the household? You could use it on the child with special needs. You could use it on your other children or yourself. If there's an emergency, you could draw down $250,000. What if that would happen in your life? Would it make it any better? Okay. Most people respond well to that. And would $2,000 a month and $500,000 be any better? Might be that much better than $1,000, $250,000. Okay. At some point, that number stops. You could say $3,000, $750,000, $4,000, $1 million. My point is this: you need to get money into a trust for that caregiver. We'll talk how to do that in a minute or two. But that caregiver needs to be considered. You do it because of your children. You love them. But it does take a toll. It just does take a toll. And so you want that caregiver share. So let's sort of transition over to the financial aspects of this whole process. How much money do we need in the trust for the two trusts? So let's break this into 4 categories. A lot of people want you to construct a budget for the trust. I've never had a lot of luck with that. So I asked 4 questions. Number 1, when your caregiver is going to take over, what's the transition expense going to be? For us, it's relatively minimal. I mean, get Mo packed up, send him to Atlanta, and then that's it. For others, it can be very, very expensive because we've had to modify homes or buy new homes that were wheelchair accessible. Okay? We've even paid for therapeutic swimming pools. Okay? I mean, it could run you can run the whole spectrum. I mean, there are some folks their children's room and bathroom looks like it came out of a hospital because of the equipment and one thing or another. So what's the transition expense going to be? Maybe little, maybe a lot. Okay? The second thing is, roughly, just sort of eyeball it, what are y'all spending a month on your child? And then what we do is we figure out how much money we have to have, make sure that money's there for the child's rest of their life, taking into account that we're going to earn interest on it and there's going to be inflation. So that's the second. The third thing is how much money do you have to have in reserve in the event there's a cutback in government benefits? Now, is it conceivable that the government could cut back benefits? Right, okay. State of California twice in 1 year shut the program down completely, okay? And nobody knows what's going to happen. We're going to have Medicaid in some form or fashion. I just don't know what it's going to pay for. So we need to have some money in the event of a cutback. Okay? And then the third is that caregiver issue. How much money do we have there in the caregiver share for the caregivers and their family? Make sense? Now, so how do we get this trust funded? Well, what most people tell me is that what's ever left of their estate at their death, they'll, part of it's going to go into the trust, depending upon whether they have other children or not, that type of thing. And it doesn't have to be left equally. I understand that logic, but what I would say to you is this, because depending upon whose numbers you believe in, both from the federal government, there's a 60 to 70% chance you're going to need nursing home, long-term care help yourself. There may not be a whole lot left of your estate to leave. 3 out of every 4 nursing home beds in Arkansas is paid for by Medicaid, okay? Very few people have long-term care. There are a few things you can do to preserve assets, but not a lot. It's a real problem. The number one funding vehicle with the most success on a special needs trust is a life insurance contract. Okay? Cost of life insurance has gone down steadily in the last 40 years that I've been in the business. The design has improved dramatically. And it'll be there to fund the trust. And we have a few attorneys who will design a trust where they actually have 3 parts of the trust. The first one, look at it as though like a Chester drawer, okay? You have that big drawer that goes across the top. That's where the cash is. That's where whatever you fund it with, that goes in that drawer. And below it are 2 drawers. One is the special needs trust, and one of it is the caregiver trust. And so the trustee has what are called sprinkling powers, and money goes as needed into either the special needs trust or the caregiver's trust. In a perfect world, that's how I do it, okay? The world is not always perfect. Okay. And the last hurdle, which might be the most difficult, is the emotional hurdle, because it's awfully hard to come to grips with your own mortality or your own morbidity. And that's what I and Lance do. We help you get over that hurdle. We offer a free consultation. We say it's an hour, but typically it runs 2, and that's fine, to help you work through this thing. If there's something we can do for you on it, terrific. If not, we understand, okay? But I'm going to pass out a request form. And just complete it, and please print legibly. We'll email it to you. And what you're going to get is this, okay? It's 31 pages. It's read it or don't read it, okay? But at least it's a reference as far as what I've covered tonight, okay? It talks about the 7 areas that I talk about. It has what do you want for your child's future, and it has a life care planning guide. And how do the people who are life
So anyone that's watching or watches this later, if they will leave their contact information here in a comment, they can. If it's later, they won't be able to comment. So if you want to give them your email address,
Okay.
Mr. Harry, then they can email you directly. That would be great.
The email address is HLEFIN, like the first 3 letters of finance, WIZ, like the first 3 letters of wizard, at S like South, B like Bravo, C like Charlie, Global, And the phone number is 501-680-2744. While you have those forms, those request forms, if you would take a minute and put in your phone contact Lance and my contact information, it would be great so you'll know who's calling you if we need to give you a call. For instance, we can't read your handwriting. Because most people nowadays are not answering phones if they don't recognize who it is. So if you put us in your contacts, it will make things a lot better. Gosh, y'all been a quiet crowd. Want to take a minute, Richard? Can you fill some questions as far as what you can give your thoughts on what a trust can pay for, what it can't pay for?
Well, we're going to follow the document, whatever the trust document says we can do. And there are some attorneys who specialize in this. They know exactly what they're doing, and they draft these documents appropriately. What we're going to do is just make sure that we're not going to pay anything that's going to jeopardize the benefits. That's our primary goal. We do occasionally have people come in, family members, caregivers who will ask for distribution for whatever. So, well, we can't do that. That might jeopardize the benefits. And that's extremely important to keep the SSI and the Medicaid in place. Generally, as a corporate fiduciary, which is what a bank is, the accounts that we're going to take are at least $250,000 in size or higher. Most of ours are funded either through an insurance payout. Let's say that a child is born, there's a medical malpractice suit, and a trust is going to be funded with insurance proceeds. That's probably 70% of the types of trusts that we have. The others are funded through an estate or a trust left by a parent to fund a special needs trust. And our purpose is to manage those monies for the special needs person. And it may not be a child, it could be an adult. By the time the parent has passed away, they could be an adult, but they still have to have someone take care of the money for them. So we manage the money, and we pay out accordingly to take care of their needs. And again, the special needs is a supplement. It's not a primary care. It's to supplement those benefits that the government is not taking care of.
And it's very important to have a trustee, such as Richard, who understands what you can pay out and what you can't pay out. We had a situation where we had a trustee make distributions that disqualified the child from benefits. And the child required major surgery and was an adult, actually an adult child, and put her into bankruptcy because the trustee didn't know what they were doing. So there's a lot to be said for having a corporate trustee. In fact, not only that, they did it twice. And the second time was too soon to the bankruptcy, so they couldn't put her in bankruptcy a second time to take care of the expenses. So corporate trustee is, I'm a big fan of. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for you.
Ma'am.
What if you are a family that's living paycheck to paycheck and you don't have an extra, big amount of money to invest or to set aside, or is there still an option for families like that?
Well, let me tell you what I've seen, because I understand paycheck to paycheck. I have seen more than one occasion where if you go and talk to the grandparents, because quite often the grandparents are they want to know how they can help. Okay. It's just, people talk about the demise of the American family. That has not been my experience. Grandparents quite often want to help. In fact, sometimes that's part of the problem is we had a grandfather doing a bond a month of the child. Well, eventually it went over $2,000, and we had to work our way through that little jewel. So in that situation, I would see if there's a relative who will help out. you know, the reality is, heaven forbid you came down with cancer, let's say pancreatic cancer, you told your parents, they would move heaven and earth to help you. Okay? Well, it may not be as dire as that, but it's still a situation where I found if you just talk to the parents, the child's grandparents, you know, they're there. So, and I wouldn't be embarrassed to do it.
Follow that then, what if there's nobody else? I mean, is there a way to do it through your life insurance or through the home you own?
Well, that's whatever's in your estate. Your life insurance works very well because you know it's going to, you know the value at your death of life insurance. Okay? And, you know, when I said what effect would $1,000 a month and $250,000 have, I mean, that's not there for you today. You can create that for your successor caregiver with a life insurance contract, as well as the transition cost and what if benefits get reduced and what are you currently paying. So life insurance works real well, but you can leave anything you want. You know, when we did Mo, it was just on all life insurance. We both had retirement plans and property, one thing or another. My parents left us some artwork. My parents were far more sophisticated than I. Kathy wanted the Chagalls. I liked the Picassos, but we decided for Mo, what we put in his trust were engravings. Engravings, I've actually brought some with you to show you what you can get with this trust. These are some of the engravings that we got for Mo. You may recognize them. The first engraving is of George Washington, okay? And this is good for goods and services anywhere in the world, okay? There's nothing substitute for money. We have Daniel Day-Lewis down here as he portrayed Lincoln in the movie. You know, that works well, as does Hamilton. Jackson, some people have problems with. You can put anything in that trust you want. The more liquid it is, the better. But you can leave, you know, rental property, anything in the world. Okay? It'd be nice if we know what's going into the trust. And the problem is, you know, paycheck to paycheck is hard. That's just the reality of it. It's hard. And so, but I would talk to family members. Okay?
Is this something like maybe a family could get together with you and brainstorm and you guys figure out those answers together or direction? I just feel like I think a lot of families that have a loved one that has a disability struggle to have, you know, a large percentage of us are in poverty level or maybe slightly above it.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying to think that we are not going to be able to leave anything, but maybe if brainstorm with you, they could come up with some ideas.
Yeah, typically we come up with something. Okay? Okay. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Is it a requirement to go through an attorney and a judge when you get a trust fund set up? Like everybody goes on the internet, and is there a form online that we can download and get it notarized?
Well, okay. Attorney, that's one of the biggest stumbling points. You can't afford the attorney's fees. Rich and I were talking. We know the attorneys who do it and the ones who are really good at it. One is if you set up a trust, you don't need a judge for that. Okay, if it's your money, you can. It's just like you do anything with your will. You don't need a judge to sign off on that. You know, you probably can find a special needs trust somewhere on the internet. LegalZoom may have one. I don't know. The caregiver portion, I don't think you're going to find because very few attorneys even think their way that far to do it. So you could do that. One thing you can do, I'm hesitant to do it, but let me just say this. The state of Missouri created their own special needs trust for everyone in Missouri. And then they expanded it to all states surrounding Missouri. Arkansas is one of them. And for about $200, $250, you can access their trust. Problem is it will not take care of caregivers. And they're really designed, the average size trust with them is like $25,000. So, but you know, you can make that work. The attorneys, you know, we can always ask them to take a payment plan to pay for the trust, okay? And they typically will. So, I mean, it's a problem. And, you know, I'm talking with a law firm now about how in the world can we get the cost down to something most people can afford, because it's not unusual to spend $2,000, $2,500 on a trust. Is that your experience, Richard? Yeah. And it can go higher, okay? Yes, sir.
How long does it take to get on SSI if you're applying as an adult?
Well, most of the folks who I work with are actually, they became eligible as a child. So if you're talking about someone's applying because they're going into a nursing home or they're in an accident of some nature?
I mean, I've been, like for me, I've been autistic all my life.
Okay.
And I applied in October.
Mm-hmm.
So how long do you think I'll have?
I really don't know. It is, do you have someone you're working with in the state of Arkansas? Do you have like a caseworker with the state?
I'm helping him. I worked for an attorney that did disability for 11 years.
Okay. Okay. So you'll work them through it?
Yeah.
Terrific. Okay. Does the attorney do special needs trust, or are they just doing, or were they just, you know, a lot of attorneys who do Social Security,
Yeah.
having lived with one of them.
Are you from Arkansas?
Yeah, I don't have a strong Southern accent. My family's lived here since 1854.
Was Laura McKinnon? Do you know that name?
No.
No.
A lot of attorneys who do Social Security work basically are working to get people qualified for Social Security.
She doesn't do any trust.
And they don't do trust. It's a different world.
But is it typical to, like, sorry.
No. Is it typical?
Is it typical to like wait for months on end just to get the first response?
Yep.
And it can be scary, right? It can be scary. But it sounds like you got somebody that's helping you. Nothing with the government is best.
Okay. I think we got a question. What?
Yes, Mr. Harry, we have a question online here from Dan Watson. How much time does it take to establish a special needs trust once one finds themselves needing a trust? And is there annual cost to maintain the trust?
Geez, the time it takes for an attorney to draft a trust depends on the attorney. If it was a real emergency, you could knock one out. They'd have one to you in a couple of days, okay? It depends upon what else they want with the trust. If they're also going to do like the wills and powers of attorneys and healthcare directives, you know, it's going to take longer. It is not like it's going to take you 2 or 3 months to get a special needs trust. Typically, the attorneys who understand them can knock them out pretty quick. Okay. And the second part of the question
The
was?
second part is there an annual cost to maintain the trust?
It depends. If you establish a trust for your child and you're the initial trustee, then there's not a charge. If you're going to fund it and put it with the bank, Richard, you're
It's based on the market value of the assets we're managing, and it's 1.25% of the first million, and it goes down from there. And
Can
that's
you
pretty
repeat
typical.
that so he can hear that?
Okay.
I know you'll be able to repeat it better than me.
Okay. If you have a corporate trustee, there is an annual charge based on the value of the assets that the trust is holding. It's a percentage, and it starts with Richard at 1.25% for the first million and goes down from there. And I think it's pretty typical for the other trust companies in the state. Other questions? Huh?
I was just going to ask if you have a list of the attorneys that you said.
Yeah, I'll send me an email. I'll make some referrals for you. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
So back to what Kim was saying about families with low income or need
Yeah.
extra income to create the special needs trust. Can a parent or someone that has benefits through their work use that as, like your beneficiary? Instead of listing your special needs child, put that into a special needs
Yeah,
trust?
you can do that.
Okay, so that would be something you need to set up with your work?
Yeah.
Change the beneficiary.
So let's say you have group life insurance and a 401k. Yeah, the trust can be the beneficiary. Okay. You just want to make certain that it's correctly worded. Okay?
How would you work that? When you fill out your form and you change your beneficiary, how would you work that?
Typically, it would be whatever percentage you're going to leave to the trust. It's, say it's 50% to the Joe Smith Special Needs Trust
So you
dated.
need to name your special needs trust.
Yeah,
when you
yeah,
create it?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Other questions?
Kind of wanting to, you talking about the caregiver.
Uh-huh.
Have you dealt with many that had a waiver program? That, where we saw one family did it, is, their child through the SSI got him an apartment.
Right.
And they had a day shift worker
Mm-hmm.
and a night shift worker.
Mm-hmm.
And they just, I didn't know if that's something that's set up for the rest of his life like that.
Well, I mean, that's the waiver program. I mean, as long as we have the waiver program, the problem we have right now is there's a fair amount of support in Congress to reduce benefits. And so we really don't know what benefits are going to look like in the future. There's going to be some type of Medicaid program. I just don't know what's going to look like. And I almost wouldn't want to try to guess as far as what it's going to look like. But yeah, there are people, who are on the waiver program, and it's, it's a long waiting list, but they've gotten it done, and it's working for them.
That's what we got set up right now. I didn't know how.
Are you on waivers now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he has a worker that comes
Mm-hmm.
after we get off work, and the worker comes stays with him rest of the
Right.
about 8 o'clock at night for now. But when he gets to where we can't watch him no more, we're gonna use his money that we got started setting up on the Social Security right now
Mm-hmm.
to give him a place, and they just come there and stay with him.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions? Well, I appreciate it. Kim, thanks for setting it up. Regina, thank you. And if I could have your forms back so I can send you all the information, that'll be terrific. Thanks for coming out. I hope you all found that useful.